evening, everyone. My name is Linda Johns, and I would like to welcome you to tonight's event with Jennifer Longo, winner of the Washington State Book Award for Young Adult Literature. The book awards are produced by the Washington Center for the Book, an affiliate of the Library of Congress Center for the Book, and a partnership between the Washington State Library and the Seattle Public Library. The Washington Center for the Book promotes literacy and a love of books and reading and libraries. Our event partner for tonight is the Washington Library Association, and we thank them for partnering on this series of online events with our 2021 Washington State Book Award winners. And I think Sarah has already put a link in the chat that tells you more about our upcoming events. Tonight's event will include a short reading by Jennifer Longo, and then she'll be joined on stage, so to speak, by Claudia Rowe for a conversation. Claudia Rowe is a journalist, twice nominated for the Pulitzer Prize, who has focused most of her career on young people, including those in the child welfare system. Her book, The Spider and the Fly, chronicles Claudia's effort to comprehend a serial murderer in upstate New York. And it won the 2018 Washington State Book Award, and it's amazing. I love this book. That same year, Amazon Original Stories commissioned Claudia to write a work of literary journalism about juvenile justice. A former education reporter at the Seattle Times, Claudia recently left the newsroom to work on a new book. This one tackles the connection between foster care and juvenile justice, and it is forthcoming from Abrams Books. Having Claudia and Jennifer together for tonight's event was a natural pairing, and I'm so excited that this worked out. And I'm going to hand it over to Claudia to introduce Jennifer and begin the conversation. So first, welcome, Claudia.
Thanks. Thanks, everybody, for joining us tonight. And Linda, thanks for that really lovely introduction. Now, our headliner, Jennifer Longo. With the beautiful updo today. Jennifer Longo writes young adult fiction for Random House. Her debut, 6 Feet Over It, was a Washington State Book Award finalist, a 2015 Voya Perfect 10 title, and Indy's next title was also hailed as superb in a starred review from Kirkus. That is not small potatoes. That is not easy to get, I'll tell you.
That's pretty cool.
Jennifer's second book up to this point was also a Washington State Book Award finalist in 2017, and Indy's Next List title, and a 2017 YALSA Best YA Fiction finalist. I know how honored Jen is to be the recipient of the 2021 Washington State Book Award for Young Adult Literature. She's also the recipient of an All Iowa Reads YA Award, and her book has appeared on a number of best of lists for 2021, including by Kirkus, no surprise, they love her, as well as the American Library Association, Bank Street College of Education, the Chicago Public Library, and many others. Jennifer lives with her family on an island near Seattle. We have a few islands. It could be one of any of those many islands. So thanks so much again, everybody, for joining us. And Jen, I'm so eager to talk with you about this book, since foster care is a topic that not only is it important, it's also fascinating. However, I'll back up and I'll say to our audience, Jennifer and I are going to do a little interview Q&A, but first she's going to read a bit from the book, and then hopefully our questions will spark some among you guys listening. So put your questions in the chat and our lovely moderators will read them out. But first, Jen's going to read. Take it away, please.
All right. Hey, first, what is that called when you feel like you don't deserve something? It's that weird syndrome, like I shouldn't be here syndrome, fraud syndrome, or something.
Imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome. First of all, ladies, don't have that. We are not imposters. Before I read, I want to say really quickly that it's just situations like this that give a person imposter syndrome, because look at the nominees who are equally deserving of every award that they win and of being here. This is Rachel Lynn Solomon's Today, Tonight, Tomorrow. This is J. Anderson Coates' Spindle and Dagger. These people are all friends of mine. We've sat in coffee shops and written together. Eris Apparently, Diana Ma. Wonderful book. My kid loves this one, particularly. Into the Deep, Science, Technology, and the Quest to Protect the Ocean, Christy Peterson. These are all the young adult literature nominees. And Girl Unframed, Deb Coletti, another good friend and a gorgeous, gorgeous writer. And just before I read, I wanted to say, I don't even know, I haven't recovered yet from this. I want to thank Linda and Sarah and the Washington Center for the book. We didn't get to do that in person, but just, my God, what a shocking honor. And to get the email notification while I was in Target and to sit down because I couldn't breathe in the Chip and Joanna Gaines section, which, because I sat down there, now I know that they keep the wooden ladles on bottom shelves. I haven't recovered, so thank you. I love you. I love you, Washington and Seattle. And I'm going to read just a little bit of the beginning of what I carry. So as we talk about it, for people that haven't read it, it'll just give you a little bit of a bit of what it's about. So this is a girl called Muriel. And it begins, you will never in all your life meet a person who packs a better suitcase than I do. And I'll tell you right now, the secret is not organization. It is simplification. Get rid of your crap. Do not own things in the first place. Surrender the weight of what you carry and the wild, wide world is yours. Pack light, which sounds easy. When in doubt, go without and all that. But to achieve true freedom, you must be brutal as a consumer. Is dental floss on sale 2 for 1? Don't fall for that. It's just one extra thing taking up room to pack and repack. And besides that, what if all your teeth fall out before you ever need to use it? Now you're the dummy hauling around 5 extra flosses for no reason. Yes, floss. Insignificant weight until you add it to that pen you bought, the t-shirt you had to have, the non-travel sized thing of shampoo, until one day you wake up dragging the weight of a rolling suitcase taller and heavier than your own body, and you're exhausted trying to keep track of all these things you convinced yourself you need. Where did I leave that? Did someone take that other thing? Why can't I find my socks underneath all these stupid boxes of floss? Trapped. My packing credentials were passed to me from my namesake and honed since my birth, straight into foster care and never adopted. The longest I've lived in any house is 11 months, and now I am 17 years old. So you do the math. That's just the start of the book. I think that's a nice little bit. So that's it.
Yes, you've given us readers kind of a flavor of your highly self-reliant, relentlessly independent, kind of funny narrator and main character.
Yeah.
So Jen, your prior book was about a ballerina, and you wrote a book about a girl who works in her parents' graveyard digging business. Which is potentially is kind of dark, but still, foster care is an extremely complicated and often really fraught topic.
Right.
So one has to ask, what would impel you to write a YA book about foster care? Such a complicated topic.
I think all 3 of them broadly are under the umbrella of resilience. All 3 of those things, I think, surviving selling graves as a child and a career in dance and surviving on the ice and a life in foster care are all about that. I think it's the most important thing that humans can have. And we adopted our daughter from we were her foster parents when she was very young, and we adopted her. And that was, I have family members. My sister works as a therapist for kids in foster care. She's how I met our daughter. She's my best friend, my sister. I've known her since we were 8. But and so that experience of having family members, in foster care, and then being in the foster care system as parents ourselves, as our daughter got older, she loves to read and loves books. Thank goodness, because so do I, shoving books at her all the time. And we just noticed as she got older, and even when she was younger, there were not a lot of books. Claudia and I have talked about there's over 400,000 children in foster care. That's over 400,000 different experiences of foster care. But a lot of the books, there's some beautiful books, fiction novels about kids in foster care, but there tended to be, as she got older, a real sort of monolith. And as far as the themes are, there were a lot of books where everyone's getting molested and the house is getting burned down and the kids are portrayed as just, you know, bad and confused. And then the savior of a foster parent comes in. It wasn't her experience. And she literally asked me, can you write, you know, something that maybe is more, because again, and Claudia and I spoke about this, this is not a typical foster experience for many reasons. A lot, you know, most children are born into it and then spend their entire lives, have 20 placements. This kid's had it a very unique, and it's fiction, but it's just another story of a life in foster care that is more about the internal smaller wounds that are still huge, but they're not so physically, the conflicts aren't so external, and they're just as brutal. And it's a quiet, you know, life of inconsistency. And I mean, my daughter was 1 when we brought her home. We were her 4th placement, so she had a very different, you know, experience than Muriel. But she wanted something, and she wanted me to talk to kids who had aged out of foster care. And she's into that. She's leaving for college next year to major in political science because she wants to work to, a lot of the best people now that are in the foster care system are people who grew up and aged out of the foster care system and who've returned to work in it to try to fix what only they know, you know, is wrong. So that's basically why she wanted a book, and she wanted me to talk to kids who'd aged out to get the actual, you know, lived experience from them. And I hope that it turned out okay.
So that's what I was going to touch on. Your main character, Muir, is very much an anomaly in the sense that she's a foundling, right? So she doesn't, there is no mother whom she was ripped away from. She's never known her parents, right? So she's this kind of like, sort of like a pure abstraction of a kid with no family who is kind of working her way through this system for her entire 17 years when she arrives as our narrator in the story. Yet, you know, it's really telling that you focused on sort of her internal state and these sort of series of smaller, quieter, more psychological wounds rather than a huge physical injury. And that's, I think, what's so strong about the book, because truly the experience of foster care is a psychological and emotional wound, more generally, more than a physical, for most kids. Right? It's most kids don't enter foster care because of abuse in their home. They are removed for other reasons, primarily neglect, and sort of the emotional damage that can come from that, as well as can come from being moved from place to place to place, and a constant sense of impermanence. And that is very clear in this character, even though she is a sort of like a without baggage entree into the system, right? The sort of psychological truth is very real, and I'm interested in how you learned that, how you found out about the psychological truth of foster care. Like, what did you do to weave that so deftly into the book?
I spoke to about a dozen people who had either were about to or had aged out of foster care. And even in answering this question, and I've spoken about this, that I really hesitated to write this because I am not someone who lived in foster care. I did not age out of foster care. And I hesitated for a long time to write it. And then my kid eventually said, Ben, you know what? Don't write your story. You're not writing it. Write mine. Write the people that you talk to, because you're the one with a book contract. I hope it's okay that I wrote this. And the way I got sort of to that, hopefully in a good way, is by talking to these young adults and to these, you know, older teens who were very generous with their time and with talking to me over email, and sometimes anonymously and sometimes speaking like a sort of on the record. every sort of anecdote and small object thing that we used to, you know, keeping her without parents sort of left her as sort of an observer while still in the system. And so my editor thought of the idea of these objects that sort of she takes to represent these internal things. And while she says she doesn't know what a permanent home is, so she doesn't miss it, something's making her keep these things. And those all came from the kids that I talked to, from the young adults that I talked to. They are the
objects.
ones.
Were some of them actual objects that kids you spoke to kept? Yeah,
that they took and kept, and they told me about. No one ever beat me up. You know, no one ever. It's, you know, and it was one of the kids I talked to that put that actual line in the book. You know, it's possible to live a life in foster care and not get molested, and you wouldn't know that by reading a lot or seeing a lot of the movies where kids in foster care are positioned, and it's this weird thing where everyone's getting. Sometimes it is just the mundane, now we're going to make a lunch, now get your coat on, now we're going to go to school, and, you know, I'm going to be there to try to take you to your, you know, your soccer practice or whatever. Like, there are a lot of, it's a different kind of family structure. There are some really good people, there's some really bad people with bad intentions, but they're, you know, like any other kind of family or system in life, although this one's different because the kids, the outcomes, well, we'll get to that. But yeah, there's a lot of things that externally you think, oh, what's this kid's problem? Like, they should be so grateful, you know, they're being taken care of by this nice foster parent. And it's those small moments that people don't see that I was told about that are just really, they don't, you know, they seem very random, and why would you even think to remember that, to think of that? But when you put them all in order in those interstitials, they all sort of became one story. They joined my daughter's lived experience and then became Mira's life. Mostly that's what they told me about. Those were the things that were hard, the coldness or the unkindness or the kindness, and the, you know, some kind of wonderful food, or that you weren't allowed to unlock a door or open a door. It's just weird stuff like that, you know, as someone not in foster care, I never would have thought of that. And they're telling me these things, and these were the things, more than the big angry door slamming or whatever. Those are the things that are like on a daily basis and a grind. When you're missing your parents or you want to go back to your parents, that's the stuff that really, that wore on them. It wears on you, and it makes you tired and angry and scared.
You know, is it your feeling that most people, most adults don't know or understand anything about foster care, or is it that they misunderstand it? What do you think people don't get about foster care?
Both. I think the main thing that adults don't get is that it's not the kids 100% of the time. It is not the kid's fault that they're in foster care. And that seems like a really obvious thing. But people don't know that. They think it's, oh, what, you know, they think that the kid is bad or did something and got put, like, that's the juvenile, you know, detention system. That's not, and even that's not true. That's like, kids aren't, but, you know, they're confusing it. Like, if your kid's bad, you'd send them there. People threaten that to kids. The moment that I literally put pen to paper and started writing this was a family member. We were having brunch in a restaurant, and this is a person who loves my daughter and knows her and has been along for this whole experience. And we were talking about a mutual family friend who had adopted a teenager from foster care for just crappy reasons, did not know how to help this kid. And this kid was having reactions that were completely understandable out of fear, and just fear and anger. And she was getting jerked around by life and these people. And this family member said, well, that kid's problem is she's just not grateful. She doesn't know how good she has it. And I wanted to flip the table. I just thought, are you kidding me? That's what you think? And then I realized, like, oh my God, people don't get it. They don't care. Like, this isn't something that's in the paper every day. Like, this is shameful, the way that kids are treated, and they don't care. And then I realized that the kids who would say crap to my daughter at school, what did you do? Why did that, you know, what did you do wrong? Why did your parents ditch you? What, you know, where are they getting that? From their parents. So somebody doesn't know something. It's not, you know, just if anyone reads this book and likes the story, that's the one thing. But the other thing I hope anyone gets is that, because I'm not some expert, I don't know. I just know what the kids in care who have aged out told me, And the one thing that I think would shift the thinking about the whole structure of the system is that it is never the kid's fault. The kid is in foster care for one reason, because the adults in their lives, be it the social workers, the social system, the legislators, the bio parents, sometimes whoever, their actions are making it so that for some reason, right or wrong, a child's removed and put into care, and it has nothing to do with them. Again, that's the simplest thing, and you'd think everyone would know that. Nobody knows it. Like, nobody knows that, and the kids suffer for it, and it's crazy. It's crazy.
Your book arrives at a really pivotal moment in foster care, and I'm sure you couldn't have predicted that, but actually,
Yeah.
right now there is
Yep.
enormous. There's a very big conversation happening both in Washington and nationally about changes to the system. And
Yeah.
as I say, surely you couldn't have known that, but this year turns out to be a pivotal year in terms of legislation around foster care. So I'm just wondering if you want to talk a little bit about what you see happening sort of policy-wise in the field without getting too wonky or anything.
No,
but this is sort of a
absolutely.
moment of potentially sea change in foster care.
It absolutely is. And right now, and then, for the years that people battled to get the age raised to 21, I mean, even that, some state, we've done that. But yeah, the things that are happening now where it's, and all of your writing about this is incredible. And just the concept of shifting the focus. We talk about that in my little family all the time, shifting the focus to preventing this from happening in the first place. And the very simple concept of this, the change in legislation. If we say all the time, the money that is spent when you adopt a child from foster care, at least in California, this is where my daughter was born, every month until that child is 18 and now to 21, there is adoption assistance paid to the adoptive parents. I'm not talking foster parents, I'm talking the adoptive parents every month. And every time we get these checks and drop them into the college fund, I'm like, and my daughter says this too, imagine what would have happened if that money had gone to my mother. If her mother had gotten that help and the resource. I can't even tell you the resources. We fostered her. We were getting food stamps. We were getting therapy. We were getting a home nurse to come and give her Synagis shot. My daughter, like, here's her whole life for everybody. But, Synagis shots to keep her from getting RSV. It was like services, speech therapy. We didn't pay a dime for any of this stuff. Okay, how about when you saw her mother struggling, how about some of that for her? Like, if you had done that, and if you're a nickel and dime or a dollar, and if you're a money person, why am I trying to denote like pieces of money? If you're a money person, is cheaper. Can we please help people who, but so yeah, so these, it's 2023 light, right? Is it the Families First? What is the act called that they're
right? It's so in Washington, it's it's essentially Family Preservation Act, which is
right.
Just for readers, for listeners, I mean, viewers, which is essentially that. The Washington State Legislature passed an act this year. Yeah, this year. That will start to take effect, I believe, in 2023, and it's essentially funneling not only money toward bio families, but also kind of directing the entire thrust of DCYF, our state child welfare agency, toward doing whatever they can to keep families together, even if there's a substance abuse problem, even if there are all kinds of problems, because the research has shown that actually kids fare better if you can keep their biological family together and give that family services, even if it's not sort of an ideal family by sort of middle class standards. But anyway, that's the thrust of the change in Washington, and it very much echoes what's going on nationally.
Yeah, I mean, that would be huge. And for people that might be listening and saying, oh, what about when kids are, there's different situations for every kid. And the problem that Claudia understands, because this is her entire career, and that that the kids in care understand is that everyone vilifies everybody else. People who don't understand the situation will vilify the bio parents and vilify, child protection services. People want to blame everybody else, but I think what also people don't understand is there are not clear cut guidelines, and these are people doing these things, and people, there's a lot of white people working in the system, and there's racism, there's all kinds of crap that when you as a human go in and people are making decisions based on things that aren't always what is best for the child. There's bias and prejudice and racism and all kinds of stuff that make, there's reasons that aren't, again, focused on what is best for the child and the family and how can we help this family. So if that legislation can shift that, yeah, like there's problems being created and children taken away from families when it shouldn't happen. And it's, oh my God, it's awful. It's devastating. So maybe, there's a whole bunch of things, and you've written about that. We don't know if these resources will be ready in time by the time the law goes into effect, but hopefully, there's got to be something has to change, because like this incremental stuff that's been going on for 10, 20 years isn't working. The kids are telling us it's not working. The evidence and the numbers of the outcomes for kids who age out, it's not working.
Right. The outcomes are horrible. Just very briefly for listeners and viewers, an enormous percentage of kids who spend any time in foster care also spend some time incarcerated. By the time they're young adults, well over 25%. I've seen numbers up to 59% of kids who spend time in foster care at some point, whether it's a juvenile justice or state prison or whatever, do some time incarcerated, also homeless, right? As you say in the book, when kids age out of foster care, there's several thousand young people who are then immediately homeless. There is no family that can take them in, and they're 18 or maybe 21. But we all know that, when we were 18 or 21 or even older than that, we were really not able to function as adults on our own. And we often had families that helped us.
Kids. I mean, now I've said this, I think I said this to you, like I'm 50. I don't have any friends that don't have a damn 30-year-old living in their basement. Times are hard. And that's a kid who's been with their parents the whole time in a very privileged situation with college degrees. And you think an 18-year-old who has not had consistency and who's been through trauma is fine to just let them go? It's shameful. The pregnancy rates, the substance abuse rates, like this is trauma. And then you're just like, okay, bye, that's fine. Right. 400,000, almost 500,000 kids. This is ridiculous. My God, I'm getting heated.
Turning back to the book.
It's a fun book.
Turning back to the book, that's exactly my question. For a system that has such problematic outcomes and is so fraught and generates such an intense emotional response in so many people, obviously in you, I'm interested to know why What I Carry has an almost like fable quality to it, or fairy tale, like despite this terrible sort of emotional aspect of foster care, the way you've talked about it in your book is not that way. It is, so I'm interested to hear like what your thinking was about why take that more fable or fairy tale kind of angle on it.
The kinds of books that my kid likes to read are contemporary, like family stories. And for this one, I wanted to sort of have it as like, this is a different kind of family, and focus on the navigation. Again, like we said, this is a kid who, like my daughter, was born and straight into foster care, and there was not an attachment to a birth family to be missed because there was an experience there to miss. There's missing because you always wish you could be with your mom or your dad. But I wanted to focus more on a life like that, look, everything's going right for this kid. Everything's great. Here's this kind woman taking care of her, because this is the last year before she ages out. And everything up to this year has been pretty bad. Could have been worse, and she knows that. But it's not been great. It's been pretty traumatic and inconsistent and often scary and not comfortable and safe. And so I wanted it to have that quality, because then what is someone like that whose only experience in life is trauma and inconsistency and having no one to be always there to be safe and protect that person? How do you react when everything goes right? What if you're suddenly dropped into something so unfamiliar as this woman? See, now I'm about to cry. It makes me so mad. What would these kids do if they had this? What if they could stay home with their mom and just be safe and loved and taken care of? And it's very unfamiliar to her. And I thought that would be an interesting conflict. What do you do when everything is kind of crap? And then for the very end, that's weird. And that's not something that's going to feel, she can only rely on herself. So relying on other people is not a great way to go, but
right. Her biggest
maybe
challenge is actually accepting something good.
Yeah, that it's not.
It has become easy for her to kind of glide through, comparatively easy, to kind of glide through many kind of not so good situations. And then she lands in this really fantastic situation, and that presents all kinds of challenges. Right.
Which is scary. And not that she can't. I wanted to also make it so that it wasn't this, cornball, like, turning off my emotions because nothing's safe. She does. She's a human. She wants to love people. She wants to love and be loved, and it's tempting not to. It's hard not to. I don't know. It's nice. And we like, quiet, fun books. There's lunchroom scenes. There's like going to the dance scenes. There's like Christmas dinner. I don't know. Those are fun things to read in a book. And again, there's all kinds of people that have those experiences, even kids in foster care. The life is still happening. And how is that for some kids?
So switching a little to genre.
Yeah.
There are a lot of books that we consider classics now.
Mm-hmm.
And that, that were published, 50 and 60 years ago. But if they were published today, might be considered YA. They're considered sort of adult classics, fiction classics. Say like Catcher in the Rye is a really popular example of a book that was, hailed as this sort of groundbreaking type of novel, but it was definitely read by adults. However, if Catcher in the Rye came out today, there's a pretty good chance it would be labeled YA. So I'm interested, with that as a backdrop and considering your book, who you consider kind of your ideal audience for this book.
I think ideally, and I guess a lot of teenagers still read young adult. Ideally, I would hope that a younger, both adults, the ones that are perpetuating lies about kids in foster care, we just don't know, or we just haven't thought about it. It's nice when adults read it, because then if they have kids, they can tell it can start a conversation or start learning, from not me, I'm a dummy, but from people that actually know the truth about foster care and having those conversations. So adults passing it on to their kids might be great, but I love it when junior high and high school kids write me emails and say, "Oh, Jesus, it was a night, it was a really fun high school, like, family drama book, but the stuff about foster care," I get emails from them saying, "Is that real? Is that true? What really happens?" They have no idea. So I think if younger kids read it, and it can be, because my God, books are the best things in the world. Anything I've learned of substance in my life has been from reading like a fiction novel and going, "Oh God, really? Are elephants treated that way? I'm going to go look that up." Like, if it's a starting point for people to get to know and learn about the reality of this thing that's happening in life, while also enjoying a nice story about a bakery and a girl living on an island, that is my dream. So the younger, the better. And then the older of people who have kids, the better. Both of those ends, and teenagers. I feel like it's hard. I don't remember, because you and I talked, I was reading Stephen King as a teenager. I don't even know what teenagers read anymore. God, they're all on TikTok. Who knows? But the younger kids,
Can you talk a little bit more about the reaction you've had from readers? I find it really interesting and great that young
It's
teens
shocking.
are. But I'm interested in what kinds of reactions you might be hearing from, say, prospective foster parents or people in the system who work in the system, or foster youth.
Sometimes I get nervous and I think, what did I do? Because people have written me, like, oh, I was thinking about being a foster parent. And I think, oh God, don't read this and think this is how it is. There's some girl that's been in 20 homes, but she's just a brilliant straight A student and the nicest thing you ever met. And I am not a professional. I do not have advice for you except for one thing. When people say, like, what would you, I think about it and I'm like, the one thing you need to do if you're going to be a foster parent, I think, is to just keep reminding yourself, this isn't about you. This is not about you. And that's why being a foster parent is it's a really, really deadly, life or death important thing. And nothing makes me angrier than hearing people say, I cannot believe the hoops you have to jump through to be a foster parent. Any dummy can have a baby, but I have to. It's like, are you crazy? Like, what is wrong with you? Someone's entrusting you with a human person that is not your child. And giving that person to your protection and saying, come and take care of this child. And you don't want to have your FBI background checked. You don't want to have to take CPR classes. Like, so when I hear the reactions from people saying, oh, this is great, I'm like, it's, just remember that you are there in the service of this child. You're not a hero. You're not doing some extraordinary thing or taking on a, quote, burden. These are human people that are not burdens. These are human people who might need a soft place to land and be safe. And these are human people who have experienced and are in the middle of experiencing trauma. I would read an essay written by a kid in foster care before, there's a lot, which I'm sure people do. I don't know, but I also love the reactions of kids who, like I kind of touched on earlier, that kids say, I had no idea. And I have a friend who is in foster care, and some of the things, even if it's a kid who you think is fine and they look great and the foster parents seem nice, it's not even about that. Like, that's the bare minimum also. And this idea of, I tell this to people too, like there's just the idea of this, that kids in foster care, if you do have a good foster home, where the parents are kind and they're taking care of them and stuff, that is not a call for this kid to have this never-ending, genuflecting, bottomless debt of gratitude to these angelic people. It's the bare minimum to keep a human alive. Like, come on, man. It's, you're not doing them a favor. You're doing the bare minimum of what every human born is entitled to, at least one adult who can take proper care of you. So, I think it just all comes back to the same thing, where if it's that, or I want to be a foster parent, or the legislation, if people will just listen to the kids in care and focus on what is best for this kid, if the voices of the actual kids in care were listened to more than the adults, it might change the perspective. I don't know. So I've gotten really very kind reactions too, of people who have aged out and who've been in care, who have said, this is accurate. So much of this feels right. You got this right, which is because it's not my words. It's the lived experience of the people that I spoke to. And that makes me happy. And again, sometimes you just want a book where things turn out right. For God's sake, once in a while, these kids deserve a win. And sometimes you just want a gentle book where there's toast and, looking at the ocean.
So let's move to, I'm sure our audience has some questions for you that I have not thought to ask. So let us turn over to our moderators for some questions.
Thank you. Claudia, you're my hero. And I moved here and couldn't believe I was sitting at the Washington State Book Awards and I was like, Spider and the Fly Lady, she's here, she's winning an award. That was amazing. I almost peed my pants at the library. I did not. Kept it together. I love you. Thank you for doing this.
Oh,
Linda and I were both like,
yeah.
Linda and I both, she goes, who would you like? And I was like, that'd be hilarious. I should just say Claudia Rowe as a joke. And then I was like, why not? Amazing. And then Linda was like, oh, that's what I was thinking too. And I'm like, that'll never happen. It happened. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I have to tell you quickly before we jump to questions that I did give your book. I sent your book to a young woman I know who was in foster care. She
Wow.
isn't presently. Very, very interested. And she said exactly what you've said today, that, you know, it wasn't her experience. Her experience was much rougher, but she still, that kind of sweetness of what I carry really hit her, which surprised me. This is a tough kid, and she's in a very tough spot. And I wondered what her response would be, whether she would be angry, like this isn't what
this is total BS, and this is candy coating this crap. Yeah.
But I think that the sweetness of it was sort of a solace to her, because all she ever speaks to is, you know, the difficulty. And I think that there are kind of threads in that book that are universal for kids in care, whether they had a really rough set of circumstances or not. The psychological reality is in some ways similar. Okay, questions from the audience.
Thank you. This is amazing. I want this to never end. But it will at some point. So our first comment and question is that this is such an important talk, and thank you. How do you conjure your particular character, and what makes a character come to life in your mind?
I use the people that I live with and talk to. I think most writers do. I don't have a great imagination, but I'm really good at collage and pastiche, and I can take people and make them into people. So Muriel is sort of my kid, and a combination of the kids that I talk to, and Kira is sort of a combination of my kid and some of the kids that I spoke to. And Natan, it's so fun to write villains. Natan is an amalgam of all the white guys with man buns who you could smell the patchouli and bong water through the computer, who were attacking me online during the 2016 and 2020 elections. So really, it's a way to get out some frustrations and emotions. You know, taking real people and everyone we know, and you turn them into the characters that you love and love to hate. Thank you. That's a good question.
So you had authenticity readers for this book. Could you tell us a little bit about that process, and tell us what that means and how you worked with those readers?
So authenticity readers are something that, I mean, we shouldn't need them as much as we do, because still publishing is very white. And as a white writer, I have had opportunities that I probably don't deserve. Like, it's a very privileged and entitled thing. So when you're writing a book about someone or a situation who is not coming from your lived experience, you want an authenticity reader who has that lived experience to guide and correct and help you make it that, you know, it's only good fiction if it's going to be reflecting an authentic lived reality and isn't going to perpetuate cultural myths or lies or stereotypes, especially around something like foster care, where it is damaging people and making the world dangerous for them. So I have through my editor and through myself and through Linda, through people that I know who people who can be authenticity readers. I was very grateful to have people reading for me for the character of Zola, who is a kid who is Black and who is in foster care. And so I had people reading for foster care, for ethnicity, for different experiences. I had authenticity readers for like third generation removed from the camps, from the internment during World War II. And I had amazing course correction and people who, you know, pay your authenticity readers. Random House is great about paying and finding excellent authenticity readers who steered me in better, less ignorant directions. And I think any writer worth their salt is going to ask for and be grateful for authenticity readers. It was a really wonderful thing. I had written things that I am incredibly embarrassed about, and I wish I had. This is a new thing, and it shouldn't, you know. But like my other two books I read now, and I'm like, ooh, that's cringy. Jesus, okay, well, better luck next time. So I'm really, really grateful for the incredibly important contributions that they made. It's pretty great.
Thank you for explaining that to all of us.
Hope that
Public-
makes sense.
Well, yeah, and publishing is fascinating, so it's great to know. We have a question for one for each of you. Claudia, when is your book about the foster care system coming out?
Yeah.
And also for Jennifer, are you working on your next book?
Claudia, go, because I want to know this.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for the question. That's very kind of you. My book is not, first of all, it's nonfiction. So it's not like Jen's book. Second of all, I'm still in, I would say, sort of early stages. I think that if I'm really brilliant and fast and everything works fantastically, it'll be the end of 2023 is so, maybe 2 years from now. I just got the contract for this book just a couple of months ago. It is something that I've been working on, however, since 2019. So yeah, you'll have to wait a little bit, but hopefully it'll be worth the wait.
Definitely,
yeah, well,
it will be. Thank you.
Yeah, well.
And Jennifer, there was a question for you in there. Are you working on your next book?
Yeah, I'm writing guys, I've been writing this book for like 3 years. Things like copy edits and revisions for this book got in the way, and I've been so depressed since 2016. Can't imagine why. So I'm trying to write about a crazy family sort of Thanksgiving holiday drama that goes down, because I love the harvest time and meals that happen and having to get together with family who you don't necessarily like, because it's hilarious. Every family holiday gathering I have, I'm under the table making notes and people are like, do not write that. And my dream, and I always say this, but I'm going to keep saying it because I'm going to will it into existence. I want Oprah to be like, hey, everyone, do you have to go to your in-laws for Thanksgiving? Take this book with you and hide in the laundry room and read it, because it's funny and hilarious. And it's the most fun to write. I love it. But it's just like adult lit fiction, family drama. I haven't even sold it yet. Who knows? My agent is somewhere like, could you finish that maybe? So I can start. So it's fun.
This is another question for both of you. You both are so involved in the local writing community and are leaders and are generous with your time and supportive to other people. Claudia with Seattle 7 Writers and all the other work that you've done. And also I should have mentioned that Claudia went on a Washington author tour with us to smaller, both of you did. You both went to smaller and rural libraries in Eastern Washington. So thank you very much for that. So you're both so super generous and connected. And then how have you stayed connected with your writing friends through the last 2 years?
We're both like, oh.
Well, my answer will be sort of short. I'll say that COVID kind of exacerbated my worst tendencies toward introvertedness and being a hermit. So I kind of really sort of embraced it. I was already working from home when the pandemic hit, but I kind of really burrowed in. I will say that I had started a writing group. Literally, our first meeting was supposed to be in March 2020. It was literally the weekend when Washington State said, forget it, shut down. That was supposed to be our first meeting. So we moved everything to Zoom. So I will just say, for a person who's not naturally inclined toward technology, Zoom has, become weirdly indispensable and actually amazingly helpful. Even in doing the new book, I had thought, well, the kids I'm talking to who are in foster care, many of them, some of them are locked up, and they are not going to be like Zoom people. But actually, I was wrong about that, and I have been able to do a great deal of reporting not all of it, but a great deal of reporting for the new book through Zoom in talking with kids and young people. I mean, they're holed up in their houses too, if they're not locked up. And I mean, if they have houses, some of them barely have houses, but they still have phones and they can talk to me through their phones. So technology has proven to be, I hate to admit it, but actually quite helpful in staying connected.
I feel you. I have a bad tendency, to want to, it's bad. I had a every Thursday writing group for a long time, and I moved to Bainbridge. So dumb, it sounds so mysterious. I live on an island. I don't even know why I write that. It's Bainbridge, everybody. I live on Bainbridge Island. I am shocked at how moving here, to get on the ferry with your car, it's like $50 to get in and out of the city. I'm like, can I afford $50 once a week to meet with my writing group? No, I cannot. And then I'm like, there's so many writers on Bainbridge. 2 of this year's Washington State Book Award winners are from Bainbridge. It's very exciting. Jennifer K. Mann, I see you, girl. And I thought, I was kind of like you, Claudia. I'm going to get a writing group on Bainbridge, because that was part of the reason I wanted to move here. I have so many amazing writer friends, and I'm leaving Linda and then to come here. But and COVID hit, and I don't know. I think I need Zoloft. I gotta, just doing this, like having Zoom stuff. I'm like, I'm so nervous. I gotta put on a bra and talk to people. But look at my shirt; it's so cute. So I don't know, guys. It's rough. It is rough out there. It's rough in here. We got the Omicron. What the hell is that? I just get vaccinated. I'm all over the place. It's hard. It sucks.
Yeah.
And you think the other thing that's bad is that you think all this time I'm home, I'm going to, if we're working from home, because I also work from home, and I have this time to write. And it's the last thing I want to, but you know what? I started going to library sciences school, because really the only reason I ever wrote books is because I secretly want to work in a library. So I started an online library sciences certificate thing through Spokane Falls. Paula Swan, look out, my teacher.
I will say, these kinds of events, they do allow for they do allow for people anywhere in the country to listen to these kinds of talks. Whereas, going out, like I went for the Washington State Book Award author tour, I went to a public library in Liberty, at the far eastern end of Washington State, and then another one in Kashmir. And those are great events, but those are, very rural areas. And so if
you don't live there, you can't go to it, right?
Right. And so the pool of people is going to be limited, necessarily limited compared to the potential that you can, the way you can sort of talk to a larger audience potentially through technology.
Yeah. I mean, side note, because of this, that's partly how I was so afraid of library sciences, because the word science is in there. But that's partly that COVID has revealed to me even more how libraries are literally like the heart of our society, like the complete, because I've been doing so many other things besides author events. There was some dude, a library in New York, upstate New York, hosted some guy who was an Agatha Christie expert in October, and I joined a free Zoom thing presented by the library, because it's research. My main character in the book I'm writing is obsessed with Murder, She Wrote and Agatha Christie and all these women detective people. So I got to listen to this guy for an hour and a half do this amazing PowerPoint about all the ins and outs of Agatha Christie gone girling herself. Like, it was just crazy. And I'm like, thank you, library. Thank you, library, for the information about COVID and giving us a warm place to be when it's freezing. And thank God the libraries are back open. And oh my God, I love libraries. Linda's my dream. She's an author and a librarian. Come on.
Thank you both so much. And I keep telling you, Jen, come work with me.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
So
I'm almost done.
This has been an amazing evening. I'm just so happy that the two of you are here together and talking, and it's been wonderful, and I really appreciate it. And thanks again to the Washington Library Association for partnering with us, and yay libraries. So
Yeah.
thank
Yay,
you, everyone.
libraries.
Thanks,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. Thank you. I'm taking a picture. Thank you.
Good night.
Alrighty. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, Linda. Bye, guys.
Bye.